The headliners, the newsmakers, the political scene, and government issues. These should be our concern. And we're taking you at the forefront. Join me at the forefront as we zero in and discuss the details of some of the most pressing national issues that our country faces. Former Senator Leila de Lima has spent almost 7 years in incarceration due to what she believed as fabricated charges in drug trading under the Duterte administration. The 3 different courts cleared her of all charges, starting in February 2021, then in May 2023, and the last one only in June this year. Will former Senator Leila de Lima work on settling a score with former President Duterte? To give us the answers to questions that many Filipinos want to ask, we have with us live former Senator Leila de Lima. Good morning, Senator Leila.
Good morning, Attorney Karen. It's such a pleasure to be here with in your program. Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. So let's talk about the ICC case, or the case with the International Criminal Court. This has been discussed widely by mainstream media, but also in social media. What do you know of the status of the case filed in the ICC against former President Duterte's anti-drug war?
Okay, what I know is that the formal investigation is still ongoing, but I think it's already wrapping up, because the pretrial chamber of the ICC ordered last year the resumption of the investigation, because the Philippine government appealed the authorization to undertake investigation. So they appealed that, and there was some process, and then eventually the pretrial chamber junked the appeal of the Philippine government. So it resumed last year, and at this point, by this time, it must be wrapping up already with its investigation. It must have already talked to some of the witnesses or probable witnesses, and I could point, of course, to the likes of Mr. Arturo Las Cañas, who already submitted his affidavit before the ICC, and he has been interviewed thoroughly already by the ICC. Then I'm sure there were others that they were able to access and where they derived the information and the evidence that they would intend to present in the course of the trial proper. And that is why there is such a talk that the corresponding warrants of arrest will be issued within the year. And I think that is feasible. That is something that we can anticipate already, the issuance of the warrants of arrest against those involved.
We have former DOJ Secretary Menardo Guevara, who's currently the Solicitor General,
yes,
and the current DOJ Secretary Boying Remulla, both saying that if the Interpol comes in or the ICC comes into the country, that they will not intervene. As a lawyer, do you think this is the correct position?
Well, that is definitely the correct position, but I'd like to say that such a stance at the moment is actually neither here nor there. Why am I saying that? Because it merely, I think, is only aligned with the current stance of the BBM administration, or even of President BBM himself. That their stance is that they're letting the Duterte camp guess what exactly would be the position of the president in the end, especially when the warrants of arrest are issued. But then again, when Solgen Guevara and SOJ Remulla made those statements, unwittingly, I think they just had a sword of Damocles hang over the former president. But then it's not gonna be either Guevara or Remulla who will be deciding on whether or not this government will cooperate in the enforcement of the warrant of arrest. It's still going to be BBM himself, and it's going to be political interests and not legal scholarships or legal principles that would dictate ultimately the decision of the president.
That's so insightful because based on also the prior statements of President Bongbong Marcos, initially he said that the Philippines will not cooperate with the ICC. But recently we have, like as we said, the DOJ Secretary himself saying they will not intervene. And up to now, the President has not made an official statement to say whether the Philippines will renew its membership with the ICC. So do you think that all of this is turning into more of a political exercise? And as you said, it doesn't appear that it's based on legal scholarship. So do you think that this whole case is being used more for political motivations?
I would think so. Although, yes, because the legal principles are there. Because if we only talk about the legal principles here, then actually there's no real issue. Because the Supreme Court already said in a case, Pangilinan versus Cayetano, that the Philippines, in spite of its withdrawal from the Rome Statute, is still bound to comply with its obligations under the ICC, under the Rome Statute, within that period, that from 2001 to 2011, when we became a party, a state party, and up to 2019, when the withdrawal of Mr. Duterte of the Philippines from the Rome Statute became effective. So insofar as legal principles, it's been settled. So the real question is, would they have the political will? Would it best serve the political interests of the current administration, of the current president, in its decision on whether or not to cooperate? Although these statements, some people would say, are good enough. That yes, while we will not assist them, we will not interfere with them. So as the Inquirer editorial has put it, it's a subtle but monumental shift in posturing. Because dati talagang very close. No, we are not recognizing the jurisdiction because we withdrew already. There is no way that we will cooperate. But now they're saying, yes, we still maintain that we have no duty to cooperate because no jurisdiction anymore, but we will not interfere. In other words, the ICC can always access those they want to access, including those 5 named already as the suspects, the persons of interest, the higher officials like now Senator Bato de la Rosa and 4 other generals. So some people say it's good enough. It's a progressive step perhaps, but ultimately the test is at the time or the very time that the warrant of arrest is there, will this government assist in the enforcement or not?
So right now, even if they don't intervene, based on the rules of the ICC, they would still need the Philippine government to enforce the warrant of arrest.
Well, ideally, that would be a very good scenario for ICC. Then there's not so much difficulty. The only problem there is, because the real challenge actually in enforcing the warrant of arrest is in extricating Mr. Duterte from his Davao City power base. Because I don't think that when the warrant of arrest is issued, that there will be a massive movement from citizens of the likes of People Power or not. Maybe in Davao City, but not at the national level. But the challenge is how to extricate Mr. Duterte from the Davao City power base. We could not even arrest Pastor Kibuloy. So it's a bigger challenge to arrest Mr. Duterte. Now, so if the Philippine government would assist the ICC, then it's fine. But as already intimated by Secretary Remulla, because ICC would just seek the assistance of Interpol. And we have duties in our agreement with Interpol to cooperate. So it's as good as saying that ultimately we can cooperate.
We can, or are we required to cooperate because of the being a member of the ICC before, and then again, of the court decision that says we are bound with our obligations.
Yes, we are duty bound.
Yes. So
That's
does
what I
that mean the
always say.
cooperation is mandatory?
It is supposed to be mandatory.
And with ICC, do they have their own agents, assuming the Philippines refuses to enforce the warrant of arrest?
I would assume so. What I know is that there are, of course, prosecutors. There's even a team of prosecutors focusing on the Philippine situation, on the Philippine case. Then it must have enforcers. I really don't have a complete confirmation on that. I'm not sure, really, about that.
Senator Bato de la Rosa joined us last Monday here at the forefront, and he mentioned that your release from incarceration is proof that the justice system is working. So on that note, he also said that if people were to file in our local courts cases for extrajudicial killings, that is a sufficient remedy. What is your take on this? Does this also prove that there's no need to go to ICC?
Well, unfortunately, Attorney Karen, do we see any investigation before any institution under domestic system of accountability, any investigation focusing on those with the highest responsibility, especially the former president and also now Senator Bato de la Rosa, because they are the focus of the ICC investigation. And that is why the ICC is not letting go of its probe. And that is why it continues. It is continuing with its investigation. Because they already said so, even in 2021, 2022, and 2023, in various issuances of the ICC, both the prosecutor's office and the pretrial chamber, that we do not see any credible investigative proceedings focusing on those with the highest responsibility. Whatever investigations are ongoing and whatever cases have been filed, and there are so minimal of them, yung mga prioritize ng DOJ, are only on the low-level perpetrators. What the ICC is interested in ay yung mga highest talaga responsibility, the masterminds, those responsible for this. And they are not seeing that. So in that sense, the justice system is not working in delivering justice to the victims, the thousands of victims of the drug war killings.
There were Senate inquiries conducted before that were targeted to investigate the extrajudicial killings and the anti-drug war campaign. Do you think that this is not sufficient, or perhaps there was no evidence that came out, which is why there were no cases that were filed? Because there were cases filed against police officers, but perhaps at the higher level there was insufficient evidence.
Attorney Karen, if you recall, I used to chair the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights, and I filed that resolution calling for an inquiry into the drug war killings. So for about 3 hearings, I presided over those hearings. And I presented some of the witnesses, about 3 of them out of the 12. I was able to present the 3 of them, including Mr. Matobato. But after I presented Mr. Matobato, look what happened to me. I was ousted, I was removed as the chair of the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights. And the new chair, Senator Gordon, presided. The problem is the proceedings were terminated abruptly. They did not anymore present all the other available witnesses being provided by the CHR then. And so the conclusion was there's no proof that it's a state-sponsored. I wanted to prove it, that this whole thing, these killings were state-sponsored, or at the very least state-inspired by no less than the former president with all of his kill pronouncements. But then I was not given the opportunity. So kaya ganun talaga yung naging finding, wala talagang conclusive evidence na state sanction. And so that's why, that's why the ICC intervened and continues to do so, because they have yet to see, honest to goodness, serious, genuine domestic investigation of those jaguar killings.
There were liberal senators as well that were left in Senate even after you were incarcerated. We have, for example, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
Yeah.
Was she not able to carry out inquiries or investigations?
Well, in a limited sense, because the committee which has jurisdiction over the subject matter, which are EJ cases, was really the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights. I don't even remember if Senator Risa was a member of that committee. So even if she was, you could only do so much as a member. It's really the chair. Historically, traditionally, it's really the committee chair.
The position you lost.
Yes.
So before we had, as opposition, we were a Liberal Party and we had Vice President Leni Robredo that ran against the current President Bongbong
Yes.
Marcos. In recent interviews, you mentioned that you're thankful to this administration. Has your perception of President Bongbong Marcos changed after you were released from prison?
No. Yes, I am thankful to this administration because when it took over from the Duterte administration, it respected the independence of the judiciary. You know, the judges concerned, the ones handling the remaining cases, felt free. Well, they felt free to decide the case based on merits because of the absence of any executive influence. And I think that the statement about me having changed my impression over towards President Marcos Jr., I think it was derived from a quote in a speech I delivered early this month before, I think it was the FOCUP. It was a FOCUP forum. I was the guest speaker there. And there was a statement in my speech, if I remember correctly, it said something about for the elite, Mr. Marcos Jr. is a blessing because it brought the order into the rent-seeking order in its favored, stable, and normal character or nature, where everyone in the system gets the chance to partake of government largesse. So now any academic, it doesn't take an academic to make such an interpretation that I was actually being pro-BBM now, because I was just stating an observation about the normalization of the rent-seeking, of the political nature, the rent-seeking economic political order. So ganon siguro yung naging ano. But I would say that really the rift between the Marcoses and the Dutertes must have been a factor also in my release. Kasi nga, sabi ko nga kanina, at least wala nang pressure ngayon sa mga judges kasi rinespeto yung independence, because I believe that if only we leave the judiciary on its own to fulfill its mandate, it can very well do so.
So on that note, I would like to ask you that if you had an opportunity to speak to President Bongbong Marcos right now, what would you say to him? And we'll have you answer that question when we come back. We'll have to go on a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. Senator Leila, before the break, we were asking you, if you were given the chance to speak to President Bongbong Marcos right now, what would you say to him?
Okay, first of all, perhaps I can reiterate, kasi sinabi ko na yan the moment nakalaya ako noong November 13 on bail, November 13, 2023. Sinabi ko yun, I was thanking the PBM administration for respecting the judiciary. So I can reiterate that. And more than that, I can say that I think he has to exhibit, as the executive, as the chief executive, he has to exhibit more grit and more political will, because there is this impression, rightly or wrongly, that he's weak, you know, because of this conflict-averse nature or personality. But then again, siguro, paminsan-minsan, depende sa issue, dapat nagpapakita ka ng bangis. Paminsan, he lacks that. And maybe he can start also thinking about getting rid of certain people in his government, those that are still serving the interests of Mr. Duterte, those who remain loyal to Mr. Duterte and are now being two-faced in their approach to in the current administration. So that's some practical advice that I can give to him.
Let's go more to your personal experiences. So can you share with us what you had to go through when you were incarcerated? 7 years, that's really a long time. What processes did you have to undergo to face all the cases that were filed against you?
Okay, at first I was in utter disbelief and of course enraged of what was done to me. And I really never thought that the former president would go to that extent of jailing me. Akala ko araw-araw lang niya ako mumurahin, araw-araw niya lang ako babastusin, yung kanya mga misogynistic attacks against me. You all heard that. So I was really surprised that he went to that extent of jailing me. So we have to contend ourselves that there are actually 4 criminal cases, 3 major ones, 1 minor. The 3 major ones are actually the first, it was an illegal drug trading, meaning consummated illegal drug trading, but then they realized later that it would be hard for them to prove kasi walang mga real evidence, wala yung corpus delicti, walang drugs, walang money, no paper trail, no money trail, because there is none. They could not get anything from AMLAC because there's none. So they had to amend the charges to conspiracy to commit illegal drug trading when they would only rely on the testimonial evidence of mostly these beleaguered inmates who had an axe to grind against me. Because I raided them, I raided their kubols in 2014.
When you were still Secretary of Justice.
When I was still a Secretary of Justice. So the 3 illegal conspiracy to commit illegal drug trading. So we have to contend with those witnesses. We have to confront them. My lawyers had to cross-examine them all the way. I had to attend all the hearings. I never missed any hearing. There were a few hearings held in online nung nagka-pandemic, but we always prefer that it's an in-person, in-court testimony so that we could really see their demeanor, etc. So yung unang kaso ay nag-grant yung demurrer in 2021, in
and
February 2021.
that's what you filed when you're saying that you have no evidence against me. So you had a demurrer to evidence.
Yes, so I go through the presentation of defense evidence kung wala namang kakwenta-kwenta yung prosecution evidence.
Yes.
So that was in February 2021. The second one was, since our demurrer was not granted in that case, although we questioned the denial of demurrer, we proceeded with the presentation of defense evidence. And in May 2023, I was acquitted. Although, I don't know if you've heard, the SOLGEN, the Office of the Solicitor General, still appealed that acquittal, which is absolutely violative of my right against double jeopardy. It's acquittal.
Yes.
So
and this
pending.
is the SOLGEN of the current administration.
The current administration. They filed it before the Court of Appeals. It's pending there. And the latest illegal drug trading conspiracy case, nung nag-grant din yung demurrer namin just last June 24 this year. And there's this 4th case, the minor one, disobedience to legislative summons, that was dismissed na rin on the same day. That was handled by the METC of Quezon City. The 3 drug cases were before the RTC Muntinlupa City. Now, so all of these are no longer there, these 4 cases.
How were you able to afford the lawyers at that time? Because you were effectively cut off also from making a living when you were incarcerated.
Yes, up to 2022, I was still receiving my salary, my pay as a senator, the benefits as a senator, because I was still a sitting senator, although I could no longer attend hearings, etc. But I kept on filing pa rin bills and resolutions. So meron pa ako noon sweldo up
So you
to
were working
2022.
from inside prison?
Yes, up to 2022. But after 2022, no more. So I just had to rely on my savings and some, moderate donations from friends. So that's what that's how I was able to survive also. And fortunately, my lawyers are actually pro bono or semi-pro bono. Of course, it's not completely pro bono because from time to time I would also be giving them some amount, but that's not really their regular fees. So semi-pro bono. So naka-survive naman.
And what was your experience like being incarcerated? Tell us more about that.
Okay, I was treated fairly well inside by the custodial authorities, by the custodial guards. Nobody has ever disrespected me there or maltreated me. They treated me with courtesy and respect, although of course there's distance. So I never felt any hostility from any one of them. But I did not get special treatment in the sense that I also was deprived of many things. I complied with all the rules kasi bawal ang cellphone, bawal ang computer, ang laptop, ang tablet, no TV, no radio. Pero nung pandemic, hinayaan na kaming magka-radio so that we could really hear also what's happening outside. No shower.
No shower?
No. Tabo lang. What you call that?
Yes.
English?
Balde at tabo. Yes.
Yeah, no shower, no ref. Yeah, no ref. So all of these are considered contrabands. And I never really, I did not demand for privileges. The only privilege, if you may call it, that was granted to me and my co-detainees in the PNP Custodial Center is that we were allowed to do movie viewing once a week. Every Saturday yung schedule ko, ako lang nanonood, hindi ako pinapahalo dun sa iba. Pero yung iba, grupo silang nanonood. So that's 1 to 5. Every Saturday, they would put up a TV screen in an area, and then yung staff ko magsasubmit ng hard drive
Of
the
a
day
movie
before,
that you want to watch.
the movies that I would be watching from 1 to 5 para na-check muna ng custodial authorities yung laman so that's and I was grateful for that kasi nga at least once a week. That's why napanood ko yung mga pwedeng mapanood. Nas-hook nga ako sa K-drama.
And your room, walang special treatment, meaning kahit air conditioning wala. Because in the past, we've had high-profile politicians that would go to jail, but they would have like an air-conditioned room, really special facilities. So for
That's
you,
what I heard.
talagang yung what others also would get, the same type of prison.
The same type. Ang naano ko lang doon, I had some small garden because I had to be busy because yun ang naging rule of thumb ko. I need to be busy the whole day. No room for idleness kasi pag idle ka, yung mind mo, dun mo mapifeel yung mga depression. And I was really very conscious of that, to fighting off depression and negativism. So the best way is to just keep yourself busy, reading books, praying, doing physical chores. I cleaned my own compound.
And you created a garden in the prison facility.
Yes, ang taga-supply noon sa akin ng mga plants, organic plants, si Sen Kiko Pangilinan from his garden, from his farm. So just to keep me busy.
What was your most humbling experience when you were incarcerated?
Well, my most humbling experience is that whenever I would think about the situation, the condition of those inside ordinary jail facilities, the mga sa city jails, the level of congestion there.
Yes,
And that's one
I've
of the
seen
reasons
those.
why, as much as I could, I would not make any demands for any privilege because I would compare my situation. At least my situation was livable enough. Not that comfortable, but at least livable.
Livable. You had at least an electric fan?
An electric fan. I have a ceiling fan and 2 other stand fans. So although pag summer, not enough. Grabe ang init doon sa loob pag summer. So I would just think of those, the situation of others, and I would just tell them, maswerte ka na, maswerte ka na. So just be content with what you have. So it was also a time when I get to appreciate very small things, small blessings in life. Alam mo na, yung mga ini-ignore natin noon.
And who among your friends visited you often, including perhaps government officials, because you were a former cabinet secretary, so who would visit you?
Yes, some of my colleagues in the Pinoy cabinet would be regular visitors, the likes of the late Secretary Dinky Soliman, and also the late Chair Karina David, and then together with Sec Ging Delis, women from this group called Every Woman. They would regularly visit me, and some of my colleagues, sila Sen Risa, sila Sen Kiko, Sen Bam, Frank Dulon, Sen Frank Dulon, and VP Lenny visited me a few times. Even Pinoy visited me a few times, and that's why I miss him so much. And I cried when he passed away because I could not even go to his wake because I was not allowed to do so. So, and of course my relatives, some of my relatives would be regular visitors, and a few other personal friends of mine. But you know, naiintindihan ko naman yun, those who were then in government service, in various positions in government, in various offices, could not make it. I understand kasi rinirecord yan sa logbook, baka makarating pa sa mga boss nila and all. That was during the last administration.
When the days were and months and then years were going by that you were in prison, did you ever regret at some point that you were critical of President Duterte at that time?
Not at all. Not a single moment that I would regret what happened to me, that I would regret any of the things that I did, being really vocal, a staunch critic of the policies of the former administration, especially the approach to the drug war. I was so against it, I was critical, and that really triggered. Not to mention the fact that dati na talagang may galit yan sa akin, the former president, because as far back as in 2009, when I was CHR chair, I led the investigation into the Davao Death Squad killings in 2009. So dati na talaga akong, paborito. So lumala when he became a president and I became a senator. Malay ko ba na magkakasabay kami in elective positions. And then malay ko ba na he would also be doing the same what they did in Davao, yung rampant summary executions at a national level. I could not find peace in myself if I remained quiet about. I knew what was happening and I anticipated that it would get worse. And so, yun ang nangyari. Why would I regret that?
So given all of this, are you planning any cases to be filed against former President Duterte or any other legal remedies?
Excuse me. My lawyers are now studying that, are now working on it, because ang aking guidance sa kanila is that make sure that whatever cases we file, that is something that would stick in court. Because, Attorney Karen, you know that it's easy actually to craft complaints, cases, to file cases, but how to prove them is another matter in some of the cases. And pareho rin dito. We know who did it, who's responsible for that. We know who's behind it. It was really the former president, and then as enforced by his subalterns, his cohorts, like the former Secretary of Justice Aguirre, and then the handlers of this inmate witnesses. So we know kung sino yung mga involved. We have ideas, we have information kung sino-sino yung mga trumabaho dun sa mga witnesses na yon. But of course, how to prove them is another matter. There's got to be some form of direct evidence. Yes, there can be several circumstantial evidence, and yes, maybe circumstantial evidence would be strong enough, Pero mas maganda sana kung meron talaga kaming direct evidence to really point to the former president and then to Secretary Aguirre as the ones really behind the fabrication of this evidence.
If you had an opportunity to face President Duterte right now, what would you say to him? But before you answer that, Senator Leila, we'll have to go on a short break. At the forefront, we'll be right back. Welcome back at the forefront. Before the break, Senator Leila, we were asking you, if you had the opportunity to face former President Duterte right now, what would you say to him?
Simple. Admit your guilt and pay for your crimes against the Filipino people. Now, given the number of those killed under the so-called war on drugs, there might be no redemption anymore for him. But if there is some chance of it, then at least ask for forgiveness. But there must be accountability. So admit your guilt, pay for your crimes.
Well, let's talk about your other plans for yourself. For 2025, do you plan to run for Senate or any government position?
I'm not inclined to run for any elective position this coming elections next year, 2025. I don't think I'm ready for that. I just got out from a very, from my ordeal, and I'm still fixing my life, my personal, my family, and financial life. So hindi pa siguro ako ready for elected position. But as part of the LP, Liberal Party, especially so that I'm the spokesperson, I'm committed to help out the candidates of the opposition of the LP for 2025 elections.
So you're still going to be busy in 2025
yes.
helping out the Liberal
Yes.
Party. But you're not closing your doors to politics.
Well,
It's definitely like, is there a possibility you might consider in the future?
It's difficult to say, to think of any plan or to say of it with definite, with certainty, because there might still be developments, major developments that can help in changing one's mind. But as of now, I am not at all inclined to join the political fray for next year.
So what do you plan to do it career-wise? Do you plan to do private practice, teach in law school?
I taught last semester at La Salle, the Tanyada Jokno School of Law, Human Rights Law. But this semester, I think I'm going to excuse myself muna because I foresee a very busy year between now and next year's elections, helping out, as I said, the Liberal Party and its sectoral wing. There is this sectoral wing, the Mamamayang Liberal, or ML, na newly accredited by the COMELEC. Now, career-wise, katatapos lang kasi nung aking MCLE, I had to complete a certain number of units because I'm no longer exempt from the mandatory continuing legal education. I'm just waiting for the MCLE completion certificate.
Yes.
And then the next question would be, ano kayang klaseng practice? Of course, I would want to resume my private practice. Kaya lang baka mahirapan na ng konti dahil, there are many changes, especially in the procedural rules. So if at all, it's going to be just limited practice of law, selected cases. I'm mulling over also the resumption of my election law practice. I used to be an election law practitioner before I joined government. So kasama yan sa mga plano ko. But whatever is my plan, I would still be pursuing my core advocacy, especially human rights, and demanding for accountability for the victims of human rights abuses, including those killed under the drug war.
And for 2025, since you're going to be actively helping the Liberal Party, do you foresee that you can complete a full slate of senators?
As of now, we are not confident about coming up with a full slate because right now we have only 3 in mind. I mean, 3 at least have manifested, although there's been no official announcement yet of their candidacies. I'm talking about Sen Kiko, Sen Bam, and Dean Chel Jokno. Well, it would be good, I think, if we can still add some names, but as to whether or not we can really complete or if it would be ideal for us to complete, I think that would be tough because we would rather, look at the winnability, the viability, and of course the quality of the candidates.
You mentioned that you really are not interested in an elected position. If you were to be offered a post in government, appointed position in the current administration, would you consider going back to public service?
No, especially if it's an executive position. Because if it's an executive position like a cabinet level, that you would be an alter ego of the president. I was an alter ego of the former president Pinoy, Benigno Aquino III, as Justice Secretary. And I believed in him completely as my principal. Now, with the President Marcos Jr., yes, I acknowledge some positive things, positive policies that has been espousing in this administration. But insofar as being able to be eye to eye in most of the issues or in most of the principles that they represent, that the administration represents, I'm not sure if I can do it, especially as if it's an executive position. I'm part of the opposition, so we will continue to be an opposition, but an opposition that is reasonable, that we would support good policies, good moves, but we will criticize, of course, ill-considered moves.
Mm-hmm. And let's go to something lighter when it comes to your personal preferences with pets. So we heard that when you were in prison, you developed a love for cats. How did this come about?
Well, I used to hate cats nung hindi pa ako nakukulong because I had dogs, various breeds. And my dogs hated cats. They would really chase cats. Halos patayin nila pag naaabutan nila yung mga hinahabol nilang cats. But then again, nung nakulong na nga ako inside the custodial center, there were many stray cats there. And many of them would be congregating in my compound, especially during mealtime. So gradually, I developed an affection or attachment to these cats.
Would you share your food with the cats?
Yes. And then nagpapabili na rin ako noon ng cat food para lang mapakain ko silang lahat. Kasi hindi naman kasya yung mga tira-tira kong pagkain doon. So I learned to love them also. They're such wonderful creatures and intelligent creatures also. Na parang dogs din, na you could feel their loyalty and their unconditional love. And 5 nga yung naging paborito ko, na 3 of them would be sleeping with me in my single bed. It was a small sofa.
So siksikan talaga kayo?
Siksikan kami. Pero I enjoyed it and they were such a help. They were such a blessing, especially during the pandemic, na nagkaroon ng several months of total lockdown. Not even family could visit me, not even lawyers, spiritual advisors, yung doctors lang kung kailangan.
So you had no one to talk to during that time?
No one to talk to. The only living creatures that I would get to see, a very few minutes lang, yung mga guards pag naghahatid ng pagkain o supplies. The rest of the day, up to evening, that's more than 23 hours, just cats with me. So malaking tulong sila. They kept my sanity intact.
We take that for granted that during the pandemic, people like you in prison, no TV, no radio, and then no people to talk to.
Pinayagan na rin kami sa radio in the middle of the pandemic, eventually.
Eventually, but the
no
pandemic
TV.
was 3 years. So
yes.
imagine, for example, a whole year of going by, you have no one to talk to. So the cats were the source of comfort and companionship.
Yes. So malaking bagay. That's why nung pinalabas na ako, nung na-release na ako in November 23, that was early evening nung nakapag-post na ng bail yung lawyers ko. So it's time for me to leave. I cried. I actually cried. Of course, I was ecstatic that I would be free, would now be free. But then, ang sakit na iwanan yung karamihan. I could only take 5 of them, my favorites. If only I could bring them all, I would do so. Up to now, I still keep on thinking about those left.
Wow.
I hope they're still there. Although binilin ko naman yun sa mga guards. Asikaso naman. And in fact, paminsan-minsan nagpapadala ako doon ng cat food para lang maibigay. I hope, because there were several others na close din sa akin na mga cats. Like si Tiger. It's such a big one, the biggest. But I could not bring him. But I loved him actually, so I hope they're still there.
So now, total number of pets. Can you just give us a number?
Yes, I have 6 cats right now. 4 of the 5 are there, still there. Kasi yung 5 na dinala ko, inuwi ko. Yung isa kasi naglayas kaagad the first evening, nanibago siguro sa environment. She never came back. Her name was Duchess. I hope she's still alive. Kaya lang, I have a newly adopted 2 kittens. So, 6. And then, there are 2 dogs in the house. There are 6 other dogs doon sa isang lugar. They're mine.
So, a lot of dogs and cats. But
Yeah.
Senator De Lima, last question. What is your message to your supporters?
First of all, may I again express my heartfelt and sincerest gratitude na hindi niyo po ako iniwanan. Sinamahan niyo ako in spirit. Hindi man kayo lahat nakabisita sa akin. But I know you were there, and there were a lot who were sending me letters of encouragement, both strangers and friends. I thank you so much. And the Leila de Lima that you used to know is still the same, Leila de Lima. Medyo nag-mellow down na siguro because I had lots of realization. But inside the custodial center, it was humbling. The whole experience was humbling and liberating at the same time. But it would still be the same Leila de Lima who would continue to fight for what she thinks is right and just. Hindi ko po tatalikuran yan. Kahit man po ako nandyan o wala sa pwesto, whether it's elective or not, I will be pursuing my causes and with your help, support, and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Leila, and thank you for this opportunity to really get insights in your experiences and also in your character.
My pleasure also, Attorney Karen, and good luck sa program mo.
Thank you. At the Forefront, we'll be right back. Former Senator Leila de Lima is back in harness after spending a total of 2,454 days in detention, after which the courts have dismissed all charges against her. While she is still uncertain about returning to politics, she is determined to pursue her core advocacies of human rights, social justice, democracy, and rule of law. Despite being released during this administration, Senator De Lima will remain as a legitimate opposition to ensure check and balances in the way the Philippines is being governed. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news. Always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations, no debates. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno, thanking you for spending your hour with us.